Hello, hello.
Hello.
Yes, we are live. I'm so excited.
Give me 1 second. Woohoo. Got everything in here. So far, my sound is working, which is always the issue. How are you doing this morning?
Doing amazing. I've been waiting for this for the past week. Ooh, we've got people listening. Nice.
All right, I'm super excited. Let me reshare this. All right. We usually wait a little bit just to give folks a chance to filter in, but I think we could probably get started a couple minutes early if that's okay with you. I feel like there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah, I'm down whenever you want. And we got like
Awesome.
the best 9 people ever. So thanks for coming in early.
Yes, great. Feel free to share. We've got a lot to talk about over the next hour. I am Becca. I'm the developer experience lead at OpenSauced, where we validate the impact of open source and contributions. So you can find out more about us at opensauced.pizza. And today I am very excited to have a special guest with us. I'm I should have asked you beforehand. Do you want to be introduced as Christopher or as your Twitter name?
Yeah. So however you want. So in practice, so Christopher is my normal name, and then Vejeu is my unique name. And the story behind it is so I was 12. I wanted to play Counter-Strike, and I needed a nickname. And so I was like dumb. And so in French, video games is called jeu vidéo. And so I basically swap the two and I remove the ideo from video. And so that does visual. And so if you're one in English, it's basically V games.
That is amazing. I love that you've stuck with that. That's real commitment to get this far with that.
Yeah. And this is like the only, this is a 5 letter name or nickname that has never been in conflict with anybody else. So I feel pretty lucky about this.
All right, that's wonderful. The the biggest problem is that I have not taken any French ever, and so my ability to say it as nicely as you do is pretty much impossible at this point. So I apologize for that in advance.
You're not the only one. So yeah, Christopher is fine.
Okay, awesome. Well, welcome, Christopher. We've got, like I said, a ton of stuff to talk about. Before we jump into everything, I could try and do a bio for you and talk about your experience, but there's just so much that you've done. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and give us the highlights that you feel are most important.
That makes sense. So, yeah, so I started at Facebook 12 years ago, and I discovered React talking to Jordan Walk. And so I became like so obsessed with it, and like this is the best thing in the world. And so I helped open source React. And like a few months later, we also worked together on like co-creating React Native. And so I've been working on React Native for a while. And then during React Native, like there's two parts of it that were interesting that I like shepherd. One is the layout algorithm. And so this is used to be called CSS layout, and now it's called Yoga. And so if you want a standalone version of Flexbox, you can use this. It's being used by like a lot of things. And the other thing around React Native was CSS in JS. And so the whole movement around like rethinking CSS came from React Native. So those are like the React Native parts. And then later on, I worked on Prettier, the JavaScript pretty printer. And finally, like the thing I'm also known for is Excalidraw, the drawing, diagramming parts. And so I've done a bunch of other stuff. And internally, I've been like one of my big role has been like how do we get like better internal tools like web-based within the company. And so I spent a lot of time working on this, and I'm spearheading a big project to make it even better right now.
Sorry, I lost the unmute button there. So you're working on a project now. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So one of the things which is interesting is now like Meta has like I don't know like 70,000 employees, and so one of the interesting aspect about this is like we need a lot of like tooling for employees, and one of the like in many companies like the internal tooling like you're basically only using like software like as a service, so you're paying other people to like have all of the developer tools, but within the company, because we've faced scaling challenges around having like 1,000+ engineers like very early on, like none of the open source or like software as a service solution was actually working for us. So we had to invent a lot of things. And so we actually use the same technological stack from our like external websites for internal tools. And I was looking at the stats, and we have every single half, like every 6 months, we have like 1 out of 4 engineers at the company sending at least one UI diff, like UI change for an internal tool. And this has been like very stable for the past like 10 years. And so this is like, I think, one of the strengths of the company. And there's a lot of interesting challenges around this. And so the first one is we want to have like a really good design system for like creating components and everything. And so in practice, like we expect, as I mentioned, like a lot of engineers, like not all of them are front end, to contribute to internal tools. So we to make their developer abilities better. And so we invested heavily into a design system. And so far, like the design system has been like amazing at all of the components. And one of the things we've been looking at is in practice, a lot of the internal tools like are structurally the same, but in practice, when you look at them, they like look very different, even though they use the same like base components. And so one of the big efforts we're doing is figuring out like how do we go from like pure component like buttons or tabs or those kind of things to like entire page layouts. And so one of the realization is a lot of the internal tools, they're like essentially CRUD, so create, read, update for an entity. And so an entity can be like, oh, you want a calendar, like the entity is going to be a meeting. If you are talking about like the org tool to like recruit people, so like can be like a people. And so the internal tools are going to be you join like you land on the page, and it's going to be a filter around like, hey, which of the entities you're looking for, and then you're going to see the detailed view. And so we are really looking to figure out how to get that in a good way. So this is like one of the big projects. Then there's like many more, but I think we're here to talk about open source, so we can deeper on this at some point.
Yeah, awesome. I would love to dig deeper on this. And just going back a bit, you named all of these big projects that you've worked on. So React, React Native, Prettier, Yoga, Excalidraw, I think Docusaurus as well. So I think that you just have such an incredibly unique insight into what makes a project successful, having been really successful in these projects. So can you talk a little bit about, what does make a project successful, or things that open source maintainers can be thinking about as they're developing their projects?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think what like the first part is the product needs to be useful. And so I know this sounds like weird and everything, but a lot of people are like trying to find like random project of thing like they think would be like great and everything. And so in practice, what I found like the best way to like find useful ideas is look on my day to day, like what sucks about my day job, like what is hard, like what is annoying and those kind of things, and then try to solve for this. And so looking at this, for example, like when I worked on Prettier, the so I remember like the experience like joining Facebook. So I joined, I was super excited, like moved halfway across the world. And like, yeah, I'm going to work with amazing people. And my first diff review, like code review, was by Yuan Chuan, who's like an amazing engineer. And she spent like many hours like telling me, hey, you need to put the space here and like indent like this and those kind of things. And to me, it felt like such a waste of time and like such a bad experience as a newcomer because I was full of energy and like I felt like this is not like worth like any of our time. And then I realized like 6 months in, like somebody else joined the team, and I realized, oh, actually, this is very important and very useful. Like the things, and I've seen myself do the same thing for that next person. And so at that point, I was like, no, like this, like there's something to be like solved around this because like we are both wasting our time for something that like could be automated. And it was only like many years later that like really internalized this and then the next thing is, so now that you have a problem like you want to solve, now the question is like how do you actually go about solving this problem? And so for this, like when ever since I've read Go FMT, I was able to like format the Go code base. I started connecting the dots and realizing that like, hey, if you like are able to do Go FMT, but for like JavaScript or for Hack or for like any of the languages that are I've been using, now it will actually solve all of these kind of problems. And the thing with like tech is my wife keeps saying like if somebody thought of this, like somebody would have done it. And so I started looking around, like there's probably people that have like started working on JavaScript formatters and like none of them has succeeded, and I was trying to figure out like why. And so what I did was to go and look at all of the JavaScript formatter that I've been like worked on in the past, and I started reaching out to their authors. And so a lot of people think that like, oh, like reaching out to those like people is going like they're not going to reply to you and everything. But one thing I realized is that in practice they spent like months like thinking about it, working about it, and everything. And so in practice, like they are a lot more likely to respond if you're like giving genuine interest. And in practice, like all of them replied to me. And after talking to them and geeking with them around this kind of topics, the thing I realized is that the code formatter space is a very unique one where it's very different like any normal software project. So in normal software project, in like startup land and everything, it's basically a Pareto law, like an 80-20, where like you can spend 20% of your time building 80% of the project, and then you can start shipping it. And over time, you're going to add like the 81, 82, 85, etc. But in practice, code formatter is one project where like this law doesn't apply. And so what I mean by this is it's very easy, like in one day, 1 week, you can get 80% of a code formatter. But the issue is like a code formatter that works 80% of the time is not useful. And so what I mean by this is like if you're trying to reformat your code base and 20% of the files or like 20% of the time you're using it, it produces like slightly different JavaScript or like ugly code and everything, like nobody's going to use it and like nobody's going to have trust in it. And so in practice, this is one of those projects where this is a 99.999% kind of project. And until you have like hit these thresholds, then like this is not useful. And so realizing this, now I basically like got to the point where I understood that it was possible, and I understood why like all of the product failed is because like they didn't have like the will or the drive or the fundings to actually go through this like very deep working without um, being able to get like any of the payoffs. And so and so I ended up like like putting it aside and like keep working with doing my life and everything. But then during a winter, there's been two people, Peter van der Werf, like working at Facebook, and James Long, who used to work at Mozilla, that had the idea of like a JavaScript formatter. And I was like, oh, finally, like another batch of people is starting building one. And so what I did was like to get them, the two of them connected and to create like a test set and get them hyped and everything for this project to work. And so over the course of the winter break, like both of them were able to get like the 80% of like a really good formatter. But the issue is like in January, they were both like, hey, I'm sorry I spent like this, but I need to get back to my day job. And so this is when I was like, okay, I really care about it. I really wanted to push this to the finish line. And so I told my manager, hey, I'm going to work on this for the next 6 months. And so I did. And like we took James Long project pretty early open sourced. And I basically every day, like I fixed like edge cases and edge cases and after edge cases. And after 6 months, we had 50% of the internal code base at Facebook converted over. And over the next year, we pushed it to like 100%. And since then, like not only inside of the company, but outside of the company, it's been like a very big success.
Yeah, that's a lot. What was the biggest challenge of getting that implemented across the Facebook repositories?
So this was very interesting. Like one of the biggest challenge was actually like the people. And so like code formatting is very like polarizing. And so like people are like very like to their core, like they really believe in like whatever formatting they've been used to. And one of the things that I came to realize is that in practice, like code formatting is one of those things where like before the automatic code formatters, like this is something you have to do so many times. Like every time you write a single line of code, you have to think about formatting. And so this is something like if you do something so often, it becomes part of your personality. It becomes part of like who you are. And this is one of those kind of thing where like you now like if something is become like part of who you are, now it becomes their identity, and like people are going to defend whatever they think their identity is like with their life, like literally. And so this is one of the biggest thing was to figure out how to like sell the project in a way that people would not like would dissociate it from their like core identity. And so for this, the thing that I've done is I try to figure out arguments that would help people realize that this is actually like fine. And so one of the things that in practice I did was I looked at every single like way of formatting the code, and I tried to figure out the less what's called the way to format it that would be triggering the less emotional response from people. And so one of the great thing at like Facebook at the time and still today is you can use TBGS, the big grep, and so you can basically search for the entire code base like within a second. And so what I would do is like, oh, what do like people do like when they do like parentheses and then the curly brace? Do they mostly like put it in the same line, or do they mostly put it in a separate line? And so I would like look for like what Facebook does and say like, oh, maybe like it's like 80% the first one and 20% the second one. And so with this, I would like inform my decision, and I would also record like what is the stats, so that like when somebody comes in and say, hey, I don't like this, now instead of saying like no, like this is like a opinion or this kind of thing, now I could give some kind of numbers and say no, like in practice in the code base, like for real people I've been doing this. So now there's some kind of like more tangible arguments. Now in practice, those were like more arguments to try to convince people, less so than like actually like very like fact, because like Facebook is only one code base and those kind of things. But it ended up like working pretty well. And the other thing is for like the most polarizing aspects, we put options. And so we try to reduce the amount of options we have to like the bare minimum. But for example, like for the semicolon and no semicolon, like I didn't want people to stop using it because they are using one side or the other. And so I ended up like adding an option. And so we have like, I think 10 options, and trying really hard to like not add any more. And the good thing is over time, like people realized that it actually like, since if you're using Prettier, you're no longer like doing it all the time. Now it becomes less of your identity, and now like whatever Prettier comes up with, which is like reasonable, like they're going to be fine with. And so this has been like a very interesting like challenge around like convincing people and getting people on board, kind of things. Now this is like the people side. Now there's also been interesting challenges around like releasing it. And so what Prettier does is basically like changes all like a lot of lines in your code for like existing files. And so we have what we call like code mods, so like ways to like do a lot of file changes within the code base, and we can do atomic changes within the code base. And so we've been using this infrastructure for doing this. But one of the challenges for the initial updates, it's pretty easy because you can do it file by file, and like you group a bunch of files, and like this is fine. But when you're doing this like for updates, so if I want to update to the latest version of Prettier, now gets to an interesting thing is if I update the version in the repository with the ID of people, now the every single file needs to be updated at the same time. Otherwise, like people are going to save and it's not going to work out. And so this has been very challenging to change like hundreds of thousands of files all at once. And so for this, like we would have, like when I did it in the early days, one thing we would do it on the weekend where there's less volume of code, and I would work with the source control team to lock down the repo. I do the chain, and I publish, like put the chain, and now like they unlock the repo. And so this is something that like used to be like still like a very intense and manual process. Now the good thing is we've got like a new set of infrastructure where you can say, hey, this is the binary that's going to do the change, and now like you go and apply it, and then what it does is instead of like you manually having to do it in one thing and like drop the conflicts and everything, now it does it all for you. And so now like for like probably like a half an hour, like not every single file is the same and everything, but all of this is automated, so I don't need to like start learning this over the weekend and spend my entire weekend like trying to like update it. So it's been like one of the cool thing that's like infrastructure piece that we have at Meta to like really like do large scale like refactors like this. So I don't know, I hope it helps giving you some insights around some of the changes.
Yeah, that was really useful, and I think that you said something that was really important at the whole time, but like at the beginning, it stuck out to me that people start to take these things and make them part of their identity. If it's something that they're doing over and over, and we see this, I think, all the time in tech Twitter, where people have these intense conversations or takes on things that maybe are kind of trivial. Like, I don't know, should I call spaces versus tabs trivial? But there are these challenges that people take. So it's not just about creating a tool that people will use, but it's about getting buy-in from people who might have that tied to their identity, or might feel that it's a challenge to something that they've been doing that whole time.
Yes.
So, looking over all of the projects that you've been doing, what would you say has been the most successful project that you've worked on?
I mean, realistically, like I think this is React. And one of the very interesting thing with React is, so like Jordan Walk was like the one that like started the idea and like started the project, but and he's been like a lot of people have contributed like to React core itself. But one of the thing that was super interesting to me when I joined like Facebook, I was actually like super upset. And for like so when I was at school, like in France, so I was like, oh yeah, like the web is so cool and so interesting, and so I read like everything I could around like, hey, how to build like really good web apps and those kind of things. And so yeah, we had like jQuery, Backbone, forgot like the names, like Angular and everything. And I was like, yep, I've like learned all of this. I'm like really good at this, and like all of the DOM APIs and everything. And when I joined the company, I felt like this, I joined a spaceship. And what I mean by this is, so when I looked at the hack code base, this was insane. Like there was classes, there was like arrow functions, there was types. What else? Like there was like a lot of things that felt really good, and there was also XHP. And so XHP is the equivalent of like JSX for React. And so there was all of those things, and like we were able to do code mods, we were able to do like change the AST, and like we were able to change the language to like add new constructs and everything. And like this was like mind blowing to me. And so the thing I really wanted was to like, how do I open source? Like, how do I tell the world about all of this? And so we tried to open source our version of PHP, HHVM, and Hack, but like it didn't really take off. And I was like, oh, how do I get people to learn about this? And this is when like we started open sourcing React. That now we were able to like, basically I was able to like tell about like all of the cool stuff that we were doing in the PHP lens to the developers like through React. And so React in itself like is amazing, but I think what really made React like the full driving force is all of the things around React. And so React to be used, you needed to use JSX. And so JSX, you basically need to change the syntax of the language. And so it basically like pushed Babel to new heights, which was able to like transpile like the language. And there was ES6, like the new specification of the language that added like arrow function and a bunch of like niceties that were able to also like take off at that time, like through like the React like ecosystem. Then okay, now that you have like like a transpiling step, now you need to bundle things. And so this was the era of like Grunt and Prepa and Webpack and a bunch of things that also like really took off at that time. And then since you're already doing AST, like the language transformation, now what about lintrule? And so this is where ESLint started really like taking off. And then like TypeScript, so we are using Flow at the company, but TypeScript also come in and like, okay, now you have like types to the language. And then like Prettier came around the same time, like a bit later, but in the same wave. And so now like in the past, like people were doing JavaScript like as one script file that they put in. And now we have like this whole like developer environment that has been like heavily like pushed and amplified like through React. And so I think this is the thing I'm most proud of is helping encourage like all of this. And one of the way I've been doing it is through React Conf. And like React Conf was not just about React, but we also talked about like all of those things. And like we gave like a lot of speakers like space for this. So I think there's a like before and after React. And so this is one of the things which is super interesting when people say like, hey, what is the next React? And in practice, to me, it's like less about like what is the next React, but like what is the next ecosystem change that's going to happen. And so far, like all of the next React per se are more like thinking about like just the React rendering piece, which is good, but like this is only like one part of the equation.
So, thinking about the next big ecosystem change and what it's going to take to get there, how do you think that's going to develop, and what is the adoption for the open source community going to look like?
I'm sorry, could you repeat? I was getting some water.
No, that's fine. So thinking about the next big ecosystem change, what is it going to take to get us there? And what is the adoption like for users, for the open source ecosystem? How are we going to get that buy-in to go to the next place?
Yeah. So I think this is going to be interesting. So right now on like the pure JavaScript, like I think I'm content with what we have. I think React is working well. I know there's all of the like server-side rendering and client-side rendering, but like to me, it's not super exciting. We can already do all of those kind of things, and all of the tooling is like working pretty well. So I think one of incremental change is like going to be to make all of this faster. And so I think like Prettier has been like getting a lot faster, and I like push people to like work on a Rust implementation, a compatible one, so we can get even faster. So I think there's a big trend there, but all of this is like incremental improvement from something that already exists. So I don't see like, at least I have not seen a fundamental like new change around this. The thing I'm really excited right now is AI, and I see we have Xenova like on the call, and like one of the big thing with AI is like all of those models that can do like new technologies, like new like abilities and everything, and there's a big push for like making it work inside of the browser. And so I'm really excited. I think this is going to be like on the web side of things, is going to be like the really next big thing is how can we like use and leverage like all of the AI models for like doing much better. And so if you look at Copilot, like this is crazy, like how it improves like your ways of like developing, and you can like autocomplete and everything. And so for the past year, like last year at work, I started a project to have like a ChatGPT like experience that's fine tuned on all our code base, feedback group, wikis, and those kind of things. And it's very, very successful now. Like people are using it on a weekly basis, like almost everybody, like a lot of the engineers. So this is, I think, the next big wave. And I just saw yesterday that Chrome is trialing adding Gemini Nano, like an LLM, as a API inside of the browser. So this is like the thing I think is going to be like the next like big, like really like change in terms of like how do we like work on software projects, and especially on web ones. Now, does it mean, now I want to say one thing around this is like a lot of people think that this is some kind of like magical thing that can do everything. No, it's not. In practice, our thing is going to be good at like everything in the past, and thing like it's not going to be good at. And there's a lot of discourse around, hey, like it's going to like replace everybody and everything. No, I don't. I think it's a tool that's going to have use cases. And so I don't like all of those like super grand narrative. I think, yeah, we should figure out like the thing it works or not, but not go like extra like wide on like all of the philosophical like theory. So anyway, it's my thinking.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's one of the things that I'm most excited to see, and we're seeing a lot of shift in the way that people are being hired now too. So, there's this idea of the AI engineer. Have you given any thought to what that means and how that will impact the future of development?
Yeah. So I think the AI engineer is like this like idea that like, oh, you can just like give a task to somebody and it's going like some AI and it's going to do it for you, and I don't buy it. Like I've seen like a lot of demos and everything, but to me, like there's going to be like 10x or like 100x and like 1000x wins through like this kind of system, but it's not going to like appear like this. And what I mean by this is we are like super lucky in tech where a lot of the work that's happening has been happening for millennia, like within like the humanity is very linear. Like, so let's say like you're going to a mine and you're going to like get coal and mine coal. And so for this, it's very linear where like if you show up and like dig and get some coal, you're going to like earn money at the end of the day. And if you don't show up, you don't earn money. And the spread between the person that is like the best at this job and the average person is probably going to be like, I don't know, like 2x or 3x or maybe 4x. But like the best miner is not going to be like 1,000 more efficient than like an average miner. And so like you're capped around how to do it. But in practice, if you look at software, this is very, very different. And so, for example, like let's say React. And so like some people like spent like a year working on the initial version of React and like thinking about all of the like naming convention and like how it works and everything. And this was like 10 plus years ago now. And so this work like hasn't fundamentally changed since like now. But like when it started, like all of this work, there was only like maybe like tens of people or hundreds of or thousands of people, and now there's millions or tens of millions of people using it. And so now in practice, what's happening is like the initial like setup for these projects has like provided a huge amount of value over time and like growing exponentially. And so I think this is the kind of thing which is like the power of like software is if you create the right setup and the right framework and the right foundation and everything, now it can like have value like over a very long period of time and like be useful that way. And so I think this is the kind of thing we're going to see with AI is it's going to solve entire classes of problems that right now are like very, very painful to do. And so one of them is like if you want illustrations for like your blog posts or like this kind of things, or for like game assets and everything, right now you need to talk to a designer and they need to spend like artists and they need to spend like tens, hundreds of hours like for every single specific like asset and artwork and everything. And now we've seen with AI, like you can get to like a really good level of quality, and you can just click a button and like in some kind of data center, like pay for $1 of electricity and get like something you could be using as an asset. And so does this mean that you're going to like use it the same way you use it? Like probably not. Like because the cost of doing this is like way different, and like you can use it like way more context. You can do it like as like dynamically generated asset and those kind of things. And so it's going to enable different use cases. And I think this is going to be the same thing with the AI development, like the developer part of this. Like autocomplete is not something that like you pay somebody to do, and but now it actually improves the lives of like the developers. And there's like a v0.dev which lets you like actually generate like entire UIs like you say, hey, I want a UI like this, and you're going to generate it. And so in practice it's going to like likely like simplify and streamline a lot of the things that like or like currently take a lot of time and like we hire like individual to do. And so I think like if you're the person doing this full time, like if you're the artist and everything, yeah, it's going probably to like materially change your life. But for the ecosystem, it's going to be okay. Now this specific part of the job is going to be solved, But now, is it going to solve like everything a programmer has to do? Probably not. And one of the thing that's also interesting is when I look at a lot of the time I'm spending like working on projects, a lot of the time is actually like very mundane and repetitive tasks. And so for this, like AI are like really good at. But anytime it's like I need to think, and it's not like trivially obvious like what should be done. And speaking like in terms of experience, having been like 15 years, maybe more like programming for this long, in practice, like the AI are like not doing anything like helpful, and they maybe like guide me in the right direction. And so I think this is the kind of thing where like I don't think the engineer and developer are going to like just suddenly go away. I think now like the people are going to use those new tools to like provide value, and less about like their job is going to disappear like all of a sudden. So anyway, this is my thoughts around the subject.
So, looking forward, how do you think this is going to change the job of developers now? Like, how do we need to shift our mindset to think about problem solving in ways that we didn't before?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the thing is like instead going to Stack Overflow, like you don't even need to do this step. Like now, like you just say like, hey, in the editor, like you say var and like space, and like you put whatever like value you want equal, and then it's going to give you like the actual API that you need to use. So I think this is one thing where like I think we're going to need to use like Google and Stack Overflow as a crutch a lot less. The other thing is like starting to use the AI models to like accelerate like the boring part of your workflows. So, if you need to like generate a UI, then instead of like actually you are manually writing like all of the divs and everything, like start using Visual Dev, all those kind of things that are going to give you like, hey, this is like the starting point. Now, like go and like start tweaking it the way you want. And then I think the other thing is like this is more like for the developer side of things, but now for the product side of things, now there's going to be an interesting use case they can unlock with AI. And now it's figure out like what model I can use and everything. So right now, for example, like in Excalibur, one thing that I'm always doing with Excalibur is like creating like banner images. And like whenever I take a logo, I never get like a transparent logo and I want to remove the background. And so now we have AI model to automatically figure out what the background is and remove it. And so now we're integrating this in Excalibur. And so we're going to be able to like, yep, just you have an image, like just remove the background and then this kind of things. And so those kind of features I think are going to be like more and more commonplace. Now like it's still like very nascent, so like there's still a lot of issues and those kind of things, but I think within the next few years going to be in a much better shape, and this is going to be part of this. And the thing is like with any big shift in new capabilities and everything, there's basically like a gold rush at the beginning where like if you invent something and if you work on something and this kind of thing, and it's actually useful, then it's probably going to like stick more over the time than like if you're doing it in like 5 years. And so like if you're like hungry and if you like want to like have a long lasting impact, like getting into the space now and like building like some fundamental tool is going to be like likely more fruitful for your career than else. And this is one thing what I was super like interesting about open source is so I was like doing a lot of community management for React, and then like a few years later, like we open source React Native. And one thing I was thinking is like, oh, the people that have contributed to React are likely going to move over and contribute to React Native. But then I was very surprised that like most of the like core contributor of React Native were like completely different people. And then I started realizing that in practice, like people that contribute to like very early and like projects like this, like they tend to have a drive and like hungry and like early in their career and like want to prove to the world like a bunch of things. And once they've done it and like become like successful and everything within one project, now they don't have the same drive to like redo it on like another space. And so this is where like for React Native, we have like another set of like really hungry people. And then if you look for Prettier, it was like yet another set, and for Xcadro was yet another set. So like having those kind of like projects help like also find like and highlight and give opportunities to like new sets of people. So yeah, this is the end of my rants around this.
No, there's a lot of really great information there, and understanding that I think it is really interesting that a lot of the same people were not involved in React Native that were involved in React. I feel like your career span, if we look at all of the highlights, it it shows that you're always interested in working on these big problems or solving pain points for people. So, how do you maintain that excitement and drive to continually be looking at improving developer experience or, the technologies that we see out there?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been like thinking of myself, like, why do I care so much? And I don't have a good answer for this. Now, one of the things I've done changes like the way I operate and the way I think about this kind of projects. So in the past, when I joined the company, I was like an excited puppy, and I would like jump on everything. And then one thing I found myself like very often is now I like have way too much things that I maintain on my plate and everything, and then it prevented me from like doing more things. And my mindset at the time was like very like selfish around like, hey, I don't trust anybody to do it as well as me, and so like I'm just going to like keep doing it myself and like protect it like I can. And one thing I realized at some point, like, yeah, it doesn't work. And I remember I talked to my like director at the time, and he was like, yeah, like, no, like this is not healthy. Like, okay, you're going to work on React Native. Like, I want you to be like fully focused and go and drop everything else. And like, don't worry, I have your back. I'll like figure it out. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll trust you. And in practice, what happened is that I did. I completely dropped everything, and and then I think 6 months or a year later, I was like, okay, taking point of like what happened to those projects. And so like some of the projects, nobody like took over, but at the same time, like they kept working, and like there was no like big issues, and so this was not a big deal. And some project actually really like exploded, and with like a new leadership. And so one of them was CSS layouts, and so Emil Slogender took it and like renamed it to Yoga, and like made it work outside of React Native. And this is one of the things that I realized that in practice, because I was like so close to it, I didn't let anybody contribute, and actually prevented the growth of the project. And so then I started like when looking at like new projects, was to like rethink my like mindset. And now whenever I like start a project, what I do is I try to figure out like, okay, how can I like get the project started, because this is like what I'm really good at, and how do I get like people to like contribute, and with the mindset of like going to create lasting like contributor and maintainers for those projects. And if I'm able to do this, now I can like after 6 months, a year, like when I'm done like with the initial ramp up and everything, and like the thing I'm really good at, like after like the next like 5 years and 10 years of the project, now there are people that can like actually do the day to day and those kind of things. And so this is now I'm very intentional around doing these kind of things. And the thing I thought at the beginning is that, oh, I would like steal opportunities for them and this kind of thing, but in practice, it's the opposite. Like, there's very few people that are like crazy like me, that are like starting, like love to like have high risk and high visibility projects and everything. A lot of people are very happy to like take on very popular project and like keep maintaining it. And so this is very useful for their own career and growth and everything. And so I think it's a win-win situation. And so I've been adopting this mindset. And so now I'm like very always intentional around like, okay, what is the next big thing that like I can like start and like improve and everything. But I'm no longer just like starting it on my own. I'm like always inviting people and creating a community around it. So this has been like my like playbook, and so far has been working. So we'll see in the future if it keeps going, but fingers crossed, the future will be right.
Yeah, so I just put my teammate John posted this 2 hours ago, and it reminded me of a lot of the stuff that we've said in this conversation. And the quote is, the tech industry has become so hyper focused on AI taking our jobs, we become numb to maintainer burnout and critical personnel quietly giving up. Who cares when AGI will happen? When will the open source ecosystem implode because there are no maintainers left? And I think like we've kind of touched a little bit on this, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So I think one of the things which is super interesting about open source is in itself, like we are like not dealing with money because like we're giving it for free, but at the same time, like we need people to have money for like maintaining it. And so it's a very like interesting balance. And like I'm looking at it from various different angles for this. So there's where do we get money from like to actually do this? So one of them, and the one I've used the most, is like the company paying for this. And so I spend a lot of time like in open source and in practice, like who's paying for this for me is Facebook/Meta. And so the thing I really appreciate about this company is like it truly believes in open source. And and right now there's a lot of like push on open source and AI, but like it's been true like since like I joined like 12 years ago. And so this is like I'm very grateful for it. And the wins like for the company, like they're doing it, so it must be good for them. So this is like one way to sponsor open source. The second way to do it is by creating a company around the project. And so for example, for Excalibur, there's like this is open source, and like all of the code and like is free and open source and everything. But during the pandemic, a lot of VCs starting reaching out to me, hey, you should build a company around this and like quit your job. And I was like, no, I'm not quitting my job. I'm happy. But I do agree that like a company is needed around this. And the rationale for this is even though it's open source and fully end-to-end encrypted and everything, like it's dealing with very sensitive data. And so companies are like legitimately reticent around adopting it with all of this risk and everything. And so, but they want to have a company backing it to be able to trust this. And so this is where we started the Excalibur company. And with like a traditional like SaaS plan where like you can pay like $7 a month per like seats. And for this, you get like all of the like privacy compliance and all of this. And also you get the ability to like connect with your authentication, and you get like persistent documents within people and sharing access and everything. And this has been like working super well. And now we have like a team of like 10 full-time people, and the company is like profitable and everything. So this is like one model. And then the last model I've seen is donations. And so this is the one we're using for Prettier. And in practice right now, so we've raised $140,000, and we're paying two maintainers $1,500 a month. And they've been doing an amazing job at like maintaining it. But just this morning, I was looking at the account, and we only have like $7,000 left on the account, so only like a few months worth of runway. And so like this is something we need to figure out, like how to be sustainable. So if anybody's listening wants to either like personally contribute or like figure out like if their company wants to sponsor and this kind of things, please do it. That would be super helpful. And the other thing I'm super excited, I'm going to leak a bit, but the Syntax folks are working on a way to like print t-shirts and sell t-shirts for open source projects, and like to give the winnings, like the earnings of the t-shirts to the open source projects. And so like stay tuned in the next few weeks if you want a prettier t-shirt. So this is like the kind of things now in practice, like this kind of amounts are like working really well for like really big project like Prettier, which is like used everywhere. And even though like those are like pretty small amounts, like $140,000 is like not even like 1 year worth of like any FANG salary. And so this is going to be really interesting to see like what is the like future looks like for like the smaller projects or like less visible projects. And so I don't have a really good solution, but this is like a very interesting project, like thinking. And one thing is also I realized is that a lot of people that are contributing to this project are actually working at like big companies and like are making a lot of money and actually don't want like money involved. And the other thing with money is like usually like when money gets involved, especially in like relatively small quantities, it usually comes with a lot of drama. And the people that are doing it for fun, who are like the best people, tend to like not want to involve, and like the people that are doing it for the money like tend to get involved. And so this also like completely changes the dynamics and of open source projects. So this is like a very complex space, and I hope like we'll find something. But yeah, the maintainer like burnout is like very real. And so one thing I recommend like everybody is like a maintainer and like really thinking about like dissociating themselves from the project, and like if it doesn't like sustain them like on a personal or emotional and everything, like this is not something that they have to suffer through. And this is the same thing I was thinking like with oh, I own the project, I don't want anybody else to like join everything. There may be a way out and for their sake, but yeah, it's a complex project and like it's very case by case. Some projects are like very easy to monetize like XLHydro, but some projects, like if it's a deep library somewhere, like it's going to be a lot harder. So yeah, I don't have like a magical one solution, but something like people should think about. And thanks for like bringing the question, because there's a lot of opportunities like in the space. You just need to like somehow be creative around this.
Hey, salut Christophe. It's Nick here. I work with Becca. Just a couple things. Side note, but the Syntax t-shirts are very comfortable because I got one from Sentry a couple weeks ago, so it's definitely super good fabric. But on a more serious note, though, yeah, I'm curious. Like you're talking about with the money and how you divvy it up, like with Prettier, you're saying there's like kind of, it sounds like there's just two maintainers or two like main people. So like, is that like that's like a 50-50 split, like you were saying? But how does it work within, well, I guess a couple things, like within the Excalibur company itself, you said there's about 10 employees. Is everybody equally paid, or is it just like based on like, are some people more senior or people do a bit less than others? Or just curious of the dynamic there, if you want to speak to it.
Yeah, so for XLHydro, like it's basically run as a company. And so like there are founders, and there's like senior people, junior people, and like different roles, like engineers, like marketing, like design and kind of things. So like I don't think there's any like special thing. Like we're not trying to like innovate on this. Like this is run as a company. And
Okay.
so yeah, but this is like the company is run, and like they are like some people on the company are like working on the open source project, and some people like from the community are also working on the project. And so it's more like this is like one of the projects of the company, and like the open source part, but they also have like all of the like non-open source software as a service. Like nothing is open source, and yeah, not everything needs to be open source to provide value. This is also like
Yeah.
one of the thinking that a lot of people get stuck on is like, oh, open source needs to be like 100% free, 100% like, no, like you need like you're providing a service to people and you need to figure out like how to make it sustainable. So I don't have this like zealot kind of thinking around like, oh, everything needs to be open source, and like if it's not open source it's wrong and this kind of thing, or like if it's paid it's wrong. No, you need to figure out like how do you provide value for people, and open source is one way to do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the other one I was curious about, like you were saying, like obviously there's some drama when it's small amounts of money, like in general, you know, like divvying it up, because like I mean I've been contributing to open source for a while, but like I've never been paid for it except for once, I think. But I'm like forgetting the drama for a second, like how do you typically divvy it up? Like I'm guessing it's not like bean counting, like, oh, this person had 2 PRs so they get like.
Yeah, so one thing I tried to do was with Prettier, like, so we got like when I did it like many years ago, we got like $40,000 of donations, and I was like, okay, there's like I looked at all of the commits, and there was and I look at whoever has like more than 20 commits, and then I basically said like, hey, there's that many people, there's like $40,000, and I think it was like $3,000 like if you divide it. And so I basically told everybody and like pinged them, hey, do you want $3,000 for your involvement? And there's only I think one person that accepted the money, and everybody else was like, oh no, it was a long time ago, or I did it for fun, or those kind of things. So this is something that's like even accepting the money is not something that's like people wanted.
Yeah,
So
okay.
this is also what was one interesting learning about this. And one thing is, especially for like smaller sums, like 3,000 starts to become a big sum, but there's also like like taxes involvements, and like people like individual people like receiving like a relatively big like amount of money but small enough comes with like, hey, you need to like figure out like you may need to create a company, or like need a business expense, or like you need to like do it with taxes, and every single country is different, and we have like open source people coming from like all of the countries in the world, and so it's actually like all of this logistics is not trivial, and even next is like sending the money. And so one of the things that I found very interesting, I'm running like weekly programming challenges where I pay like $150 per like challenge. And I've had like really hard time like sending money like in all of the countries. And so like there's a combination of like PayPal and bank wires and crypto and like many other things. And like this is very, very interesting, like how like a lot of people are just like they have their day-to-day job and like they don't know how to receive money, and so there's also this factor. But like I think people should try and experiment with things. I didn't want to like there's the system of bounties that could be interesting, but I've never really played with it, and I don't like to have like specific work like being paid some money but other work not being paid. So yeah, it's a complicated topic.
Yeah, definitely. Also why I never want to be an accountant.
Yeah.
Well, we're right at time, Christopher. I don't know if you have time for one more question or if we need to wrap up now. Okay, great. So we've touched on a lot of different things. One thing that I did want to bring into the conversation a little bit is the significance of the open source community. So I'm sure that you've seen a lot of changes throughout your experience in open source. What does that look like in the community? And do you think that there's value in pushing the open source community and to do more?
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely think there's value. And this is one of the things which I found like very interesting is if you look at the entire history of the world, like most of it has been like, oh, there's one specific country or city or company or like group of people that are like keeping like advancing the world and everything, and they keep like most of their things to themselves. And one of the things which is like really mind-blowing with open source is now we have a way to have like people coming from all of the countries in the world, all of the like ethnicity, religion, companies, like all of the traits you can think of, and they're actually working together on something. And this is like, to me, like the value of like the internet and the value of like this world is like, hey, how do we collectively work on like making the world better? And so I think this is like a very unique thing, and like I think very, very amazing. And like I want like to do whatever I can to like help push this forward. So thanks so much like for like working on this like podcast, and like helping evangelize, and like helping like talk about it, and like improve the situation, because I think this is like how we're going to be as like as the world, like the most impactful way to get like to be better. So yes.
I think that's a great way to close out. Thanks so much for being here with us today. I think I probably could have talked to you for at least another 3 hours. So this was wonderful. Your experience is really useful. So I do really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Becca and Nick. It was amazing to be talking to you.
Just a quick announcement. Thanks to everybody here that was listening and participating. Let me know if you have any other questions. We will be having our Twitter space again next week, but it will be on Monday, July 1st at 1 p.m. with John Papa from Microsoft. So definitely check that out. We're going to be talking about an open source approach to development. And we, again, thank you, Christopher, for being here, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.